Jennifer Walsh found the jacket on a Tuesday morning in early December, draped over her backyard fence like someone had carefully placed it there. She almost didn't notice it. She was running late for the twins' school drop-off. Her shift at the hospital had run long, and she'd gotten maybe 3 hours of sleep before Emma woke up with a nightmare about monsters under the bed. But something about the leather caught her eye as she herded Ethan and Emma toward the car. The jacket was obviously expensive, high-quality leather with patches sewn on the back, the kind bikers wore. It definitely didn't belong to her or anyone she knew. "Mom, whose jacket is that?" Emma asked, always observant. "I don't know, sweetie," Jen said, glancing at her watch. 7:45. School started at 8:15, and it was a 12-minute drive. Probably blew off someone's motorcycle. I'll figure it out later. But later never came. After school, drop-off came the grocery store because they were out of milk and bread, then the pharmacy to pick up Ethan's inhaler refill, then home to sleep for 4 hours before her shift started again at 7 p.m. The jacket stayed on the fence, and Jen tried not to think about it. It was still there Wednesday morning when she got home from her shift, frost coating the leather. Guilt pricked at her. Someone was probably looking for this, probably worried. She should at least bring it inside, see if there was identification. After getting the twins off to school, Jen brought the jacket in and laid it on the kitchen table. It was heavy, well worn, with Northern Riders MC patched across the back, along with Wisconsin, and various pins and smaller patches. The leather was soft, obviously cared for, expensive, definitely not something you'd want to lose. Jen checked the pockets. In the inside left pocket, she found a wallet. Her first instinct was to open it, find ID, call the owner. But something made her hesitate. This was someone's private property. She shouldn't snoop. She'd just call the number on the club patch. There was a phone number stitched along the bottom for roadside assistance, whatever that meant. But as she picked up the wallet to set it aside, it fell open and something slipped out. Not a credit card or ID, an envelope. And inside that envelope was cash. A lot of cash. Jen stared at the bills spread across her kitchen table, her heart pounding. She counted twice to make sure she wasn't seeing things. $5,000, $1,500 bills, crisp and new, bundled with a rubber band. Her mind raced. This had to be drug money, or illegal gambling, something shady. Normal people didn't carry $5,000 in cash in a jacket pocket. But there was also a piece of paper, folded small, tucked in with the money. Jen unfolded it with trembling hands. The handwriting was rough, masculine, written in pencil. For Emma's medical fund. From the guys at the shop. Emma. Her Emma. No, that was impossible. This was someone else's Emma, someone else's medical crisis. This money wasn't meant for her. Jen looked at the other contents of the wallet now. Driver's license. Dean Foster, age 47. Address in town, maybe 3 miles from her house. Credit cards, insurance card, a photo of a woman. Pretty, blonde, smiling, tucked behind the license. And a business card, Foster's Custom Bikes, Sales and Repair. She Googled the bike shop. It was real, had good reviews, had been in business for 15 years. Dean Foster was listed as the owner. Nothing about drugs or illegal activity. Just a regular business owner who happened to ride with a motorcycle club. Jen looked at the cash again, at the note. This was meant for someone's daughter, someone named Emma who needed medical care. But it had ended up in her yard, in her hands, when she desperately needed exactly this amount of money. Her bank account had $63 in it. Rent was due in 2 weeks, and she was $800 short. The twins needed winter boots. Ethan's had holes in them. Her car was making a noise that probably meant expensive repairs. And Christmas was 3 weeks away, and she had nothing saved, nothing to give her kids except disappointment. $5,000 would solve everything, every problem. Every sleepless night spent calculating bills and praying nothing else broke. She could pay rent, buy boots, fix the car, give the twins a real Christmas. Nobody would know. She could just keep the money, throw away the jacket and wallet, pretend she'd never found it. The thought was there for maybe 30 seconds before shame washed over her. She'd been raised better than that. And more importantly, she was raising her kids better than that. Ethan and Emma were watching how she handled adversity, learning what kind of person to be from her example. She couldn't teach them to steal. Jen put the money back in the envelope. the envelope back in the wallet, and the wallet back in the jacket. Then she called the number on the patch. A man answered on the third ring. Northern Riders. Hi, Jen said, her voice shaking slightly. I found a jacket, a leather one, with your club patch. It was in my yard. I think it belongs to someone named Dean Foster? There was a pause. Dean's jacket? Where'd you find it? In my backyard, on my fence. I don't know how it got there. What's your address? Jen gave it, and the man grunted. That's 2 streets over from Dean's route home. Must have flown off his bike. He's been tearing the town apart looking for it. Can you hold on to it? I'll have him come by. Sure, Jen said. I'll be here until 4, then I have to go to work. He'll be there before then, the man promised. Jen hung up and looked at the jacket. In a few hours it would be gone, and with it, the $5,000 that could have changed everything. She pressed her palms against her eyes and tried not to cry. Dean Foster arrived at 2:30, riding a massive black Harley that made the windows rattle. He was tall and broad-shouldered, with graying hair pulled back in a ponytail and a beard that probably scared small children. His leather vest had even more patches than the jacket, and his boots were scuffed and worn. He looked exactly like what Jen imagined when she thought biker, intimidating, rough, potentially dangerous. But when she opened the door, his expression was pure relief. You found my jacket, he said, his voice rough. I thought it was gone forever. It was on my back fence, Jen said, handing it over. I don't know how it got there. Probably caught wind on the highway, Dean said, running his hands over the leather like it was precious. I didn't realize it was gone until I got home. Backtracked the whole route. Couldn't find it. Thank you for calling. Of course, Jen said. She hesitated, then added, I didn't look through it or anything. Just found ID to figure out who it belonged to. Dean nodded, already checking the pockets. His hand went to the inside left pocket, pulled out the wallet, and his whole body relaxed. Thank God, he muttered. This would have been a disaster. He pulled out the envelope, checked that the money was still there, and Jen saw his shoulders drop. Whatever this money was for, it mattered enormously to him. Everything there? Jen asked. Yeah, Dean said, relief making his voice rough. Yeah, it's all here. He looked at her properly for the first time, really seeing her. You could have kept it. The money. Nobody would have known. I would have known, Jen said simply, and my kids would have known. I looked at your ID to return the jacket. That means I saw there was money. What kind of person would I be if I stole it? Dean studied her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he pulled out $200 bills from the envelope. Reward. For your honesty. No, Jen said immediately, stepping back. I didn't do it for a reward. I did it because it was the right thing to do. Take it, Dean insisted. Please. You don't know what this money is for, but trust me when I say getting it back is worth $200 to me. Jen wanted to take it. God, she wanted to take it. $200 would buy the twins winter boots and still leave enough for groceries. But something about accepting money for basic decency felt wrong. Really, she said. I can't, but thank you. Dean looked at her for another long moment, then nodded slowly and put the bills back. You're a good person, he said. Not many of those left. He pulled out a business card from his wallet. You ever need anything, bike repair, help with a car, anything, you call me, free of charge. That's a standing offer. I don't have a bike, Jen said. The offer stands anyway, Dean replied. He hesitated at the door. Can I ask your name? Jennifer Walsh, Jen. Thank you, Jen, Dean said. You did a good thing today. After he left, Jen went inside and cried. She cried from exhaustion, from stress, from the knowledge that she'd just let $5,000 walk away. She cried because she was so tired of being strong, so tired of doing the right thing when the wrong thing would be so much easier. Then she dried her eyes, made a peanut butter sandwich for lunch, and went to sleep for 2 hours before picking up the twins from school. She didn't think about the jacket again. She couldn't afford to. She had bills to pay and kids to raise, and a life that didn't include space for regrets. 3 days later, on Friday afternoon, Jen came home from the grocery store to find a large box on her front porch. No shipping label, no return address, just her name written on the top in that same rough, masculine handwriting from the note she'd seen. Inside were winter boots, 4 pairs, 2 in Ethan's size, 2 in Emma's size, different styles so they could each choose. Also gloves, hats, scarves, all new with tags still attached. And at the bottom, an envelope. Jen opened it with shaking hands. Inside was $500 in cash and a note for the twins. Because honesty deserves to be rewarded even when people say they don't want rewards. D. Jen sat on her porch steps and cried again, but this time from gratitude and relief and the overwhelming kindness of a stranger who'd seen her need without her saying a word. That weekend, Jen took the twins shopping. They each picked their favorite boots, plus new coats that were on sale. With the remaining money, Jen paid a chunk of the rent and fixed the car's exhaust problem. It wasn't $5,000, but it was enough. It was more than enough. On Monday, Jen called the number on Dean's business card. He answered immediately. Foster's Custom Bikes. "This is Jen Walsh," she said. "The box of clothes. You didn't have to do that." "I know I didn't have to," Dean said, "but I wanted to. You gave back $5,000 without hesitation. You think I'm not going to notice you were afraid to take $200 for a reward? People who turn down money when they clearly need it are either proud or desperate. You struck me as both." "How did you know my kids' sizes?" Jen asked. "I didn't. I guessed. Called the elementary school, said I was your brother making a surprise delivery, asked what grades your kids were in. Secretary gave me general age range. I worked from there." He paused. "Did I guess right?" "Yes," Jen admitted. "Everything fits perfectly." "Good," Dean said, and she could hear the satisfaction in his voice. "That's what matters." "The money in the jacket," Jen said carefully. "The note said it was for someone named Emma's medical fund." "Is she okay?" There was a long pause. "Emma was my daughter," Dean said finally. "She died 6 years ago. Leukemia. She was 12. "I'm so sorry," Jen whispered. "The medical bills nearly destroyed us," Dean continued. "My wife and we spent everything trying to save her. Sold our house, maxed out credit cards, borrowed from family. In the end, none of it mattered. Emma died anyway, and we were left with nothing but debt and grief." He took a breath. "My wife died 2 years later. Couldn't handle the loss, started drinking, drove into a tree. The cops said it was an accident, but I know better." "Dean, I'm so sorry," Jen said again, not knowing what else to say. "The guys at the bike shop, my club brothers, they've been watching me self-destruct for years," Dean said. 6 months ago, they staged an intervention, made me start counseling, made me start living again, and they took up a collection for me to establish a fund in Emma's name to help other families dealing with pediatric cancer costs. That $5,000 was the start of it." Jen felt tears running down her face. "I almost kept it," she confessed. "For about 30 seconds, I thought about keeping it. I'm broke and desperate, and I have twins who need things I can't afford. I almost convinced myself it was okay." "But you didn't," Dean said. "That's what matters. And now that money will help kids like Emma, kids whose parents are where I was, terrified and broke and willing to do anything." "I'm glad," Jen said. "I'm glad it's going somewhere good." "Me too," Dean said. Then, "Listen, I know you turned down the reward, but I've got a proposition. My shop needs someone to handle the books, manage appointments, answer phones. Part-time, maybe 15 hours a week. Pays decent, hours are flexible, and you can bring your kids if you need to after school. You interested?" Jen's heart leaped. "Are you offering me a job?" "I'm offering someone who demonstrated integrity under pressure a job," Dean corrected. "If you want it." "Yes," Jen said immediately. "Yes, I want it." "Can you start Monday?" Dean asked. "I work night shifts at the hospital Monday through Thursday," Jen said, "but I could do mornings Tuesday and Thursday and maybe a few hours on weekends." "Perfect," Dean said. "See you Tuesday morning at 9. After hanging up, Jen stared at her phone in disbelief. A job, extra income, flexible hours. It felt like a miracle, except she knew it wasn't. It was just kindness, given freely by someone who understood struggle and loss. She called her best friend Mike, a fellow nurse who'd helped her through the divorce. "Something good happened," she said when he answered. "I'm listening," Mike said. Jen told him everything. The jacket, the money, the note about Emma, the boots, the job offer. By the end, Mike was laughing in that relieved way people do when life stops kicking you for 5 minutes. "You're telling me you found $5,000 and gave it back, and the universe rewarded you with winter clothes and a job?" Mike said. "Maybe there is justice in the world." It wasn't the universe, Jen corrected. It was a man who understood what it's like to struggle, who saw someone trying to do the right thing and decided to help. Same difference, Mike said. Take the win, Jen. God knows you've earned it. Jen started working at Foster's Custom Bikes the following Tuesday. The shop was smaller than she expected, tucked into a converted warehouse with 3 repair bays and a small showroom. Dean ran it with 2 mechanics and a part-time salesperson, and they clearly needed organizational help. The books were a mess. Appointments were scribbled on various scraps of paper, and customer records existed in 3 different systems that didn't talk to each other. Jen spent her first day just trying to figure out what needed fixing. "It's bad, isn't it?" Dean asked, finding her at the desk with her head in her hands. "It's not great," Jen admitted, "but it's fixable. You just need systems, and probably some software." "Can you do it?" Dean asked. "I managed a hospital floor for 3 years before the twins were born," Jen said. "If I can coordinate 20 nurses and 50 patients, I can handle this." "Good," Dean said, "because honestly, I'm better with bikes than bookkeeping." Over the next few weeks, Jen transformed the shop's operations. She implemented booking software, digitized customer records, created an inventory system for parts, and established protocols for everything from phone calls to payments. The mechanics grumbled about the changes at first, then admitted things ran smoother. Dean watched her work with what looked like approval mixed with something else, maybe respect, maybe gratitude. He didn't talk much about personal things, but occasionally he'd share stories about Emma, about his wife, about learning to live after losing everything. "You remind me of my wife," he said one day, watching Jen reorganize the parts room while simultaneously helping Emma with homework. Emma and Ethan had started coming to the shop after school, doing homework in the office while Jen finished her hours. "How so?" Jen asked. "Capable," Dean said. "Strong without being hard. Kind without being weak. She was like that. Could handle anything life threw at her until she couldn't anymore." "I'm sorry you lost her," Jen said. "Me too," Dean replied. "But I'm learning that moving forward doesn't mean forgetting. It just means finding new reasons to keep going." December progressed, and with the extra income from the bike shop, Jen felt like she could breathe for the first time in months. She paid rent on time, bought groceries without calculating every item, and started planning a modest Christmas for the twins. It wouldn't be extravagant. She couldn't afford extravagant, but it would be real. Presents under the tree, a nice dinner, maybe even a new ornament for each of them. Simple things that felt like miracles after a year of barely surviving. 1 week before Christmas, Jen arrived at the shop to find Dean and several large men in leather vests gathered around the office. They looked up when she entered, and one of them, a massive guy with a gray beard, smiled. "You must be Jen," he said. "I'm Dutch, president of the Northern Riders. Dean's told us about you." "All good things, I hope," Jen said, suddenly aware of how small she was compared to these men. "Very good things," Dutch assured her. "We wanted to meet the woman who returned $5,000 without hesitation. That kind of integrity is rare." "I just did what anyone would do," Jen said. "No," another biker said, his vest patch red chains. "Most people wouldn't. Most people would have kept it. You didn't. That matters." Dean stepped forward, holding a large envelope. "The club wanted to thank you properly. For returning the jacket, for being honest, and for what you're doing here at the shop." He handed her the envelope. "Merry Christmas." Jen opened it cautiously. Inside was a check for $5,000. She looked up, shocked. "I can't accept this." You can and you will," Dutch said firmly. "That money you returned went to start Emma's fund. In the past month, we've raised another $15,000 through donations and fundraisers. The fund is established, it's real, it's going to help families, but none of that happens if you don't return that jacket. You started this chain of good, so we're paying it forward to you." "I have kids," Jen protested weakly, knowing she should refuse but unable to form the words. $5,000. It was everything, everything. "We know," Dean said gently. "That's why we're giving it to you. Single parent, working 2 jobs, trying to give your kids a good life despite an ex who disappeared. You deserve help. Let us help." Jen looked at the check, at these rough-looking men with their leather and tattoos and motorcycles, offering her more money than she'd seen in months. She thought about pride, about accepting charity, about the twins in winter boots and Christmas presents, and maybe, finally, having enough. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you so much." "Thank you," Dutch said, "for reminding us that good people still exist." That night, Jen sat at her kitchen table with the check, with the twins sleeping peacefully in their room, with her bills spread out in front of her. She paid the rent for 3 months in advance. She paid off the car. She set aside money for daycare, for groceries, for emergencies, and she opened a savings account for the twins' future, college, or whatever dreams they'd have. For the first time since her ex-husband left, Jen felt secure. Not rich, not comfortable, but secure, like she could handle whatever came next because she had a cushion, had support, had people in her corner. Christmas morning, the twins woke to presents under the tree. Nothing extravagant, but thoughtful. Books and art supplies and building toys and new clothes. Their faces lit up with genuine joy, and Jen cried happy tears while they tore into packages. "This is the best Christmas ever," Emma declared, hugging a new stuffed animal. "Yeah," Ethan agreed, already building something with his new LEGOS. "Mom, you're the best." "I had help," Jen said, "from some very kind people." Later that day, Dean called, "Merry Christmas." "Merry Christmas," Jen replied. "Thank you again for everything, the job, the money, the kindness." "You earned it," Dean said. "Question, you doing anything today?" "Club's having a Christmas dinner at the clubhouse. Nothing fancy, just food and company. You and the twins are invited." Jen hesitated. She'd planned a quiet day at home, just her and the kids. But something about Dean's invitation, about being included in this found family of bikers, felt right. "We'd love to come," she said. The Northern Riders Clubhouse was decorated with lights and tinsel that looked hilariously out of place among the motorcycles and leather. 20 people were there, club members and their families, including several other kids around Emma and Ethan's age. The twins were shy at first, but within an hour they were running around with the other kids while the adults watched with fond amusement. Jen found herself at a table with several club wives and girlfriends, all of them welcoming her like she'd always belonged. "Dean talks about you a lot," one woman said. Her name was Patricia, and her husband was Chains. "Says you saved his life by returning that jacket." "I just returned property that didn't belong to me," Jen said. "It was more than that," Patricia said. "That money was going to honor his daughter. Losing it would have broken him. You gave him back hope when he needed it most." Jen looked across the room at Dean, who was helping Ethan build something with LEGOS while Emma watched. He looked different here, softer, like being around family eased something in him. "He gave me hope too," Jen said quietly. "I was drowning, and he threw me a lifeline without expecting anything in return." "That's what family does," Patricia said. "And you're family now, whether you realize it or not. We take care of our own." Over the next few months, Jen discovered the truth of Patricia's words. The Northern Riders weren't just a motorcycle club. They were a support system, a safety net, a chosen family that showed up for each other. When Jen's car broke down in February, Dean fixed it for free. When Emma got sick with pneumonia and Jen needed someone to watch Ethan, Patricia volunteered. When Jen's landlord tried to raise rent illegally, Dutch intimidated him into backing down by simply showing up to discuss the matter. And when Jen's ex-husband finally surfaced after 2 years of no contact, demanding custody despite never paying a cent of child support, the entire club rallied. They helped her find a lawyer, raised money for legal fees, and Dutch personally attended the custody hearing in his leather vest, sitting in the front row and glaring at her ex until the man wilted. The judge awarded Jen full custody and ordered her ex to pay back child support, plus ongoing payments. Jen didn't expect to see a dime of that money, but the victory felt real, nonetheless. "You're not alone anymore," Dean told her afterward. "You've got us. We've got your back." "Why?" Jen asked. "I returned a jacket. That's all I did." "You showed integrity when it cost you something," Dean said. "You saw money you desperately needed and gave it back because it was the right thing to do. That kind of character is worth protecting." By the time summer arrived, Jen's life had transformed completely. She'd gone from barely surviving to genuinely thriving. She'd been promoted to office manager at the bike shop, which came with better pay and benefits. She'd paid off all her debt. She'd started saving consistently for the first time in years. But more than the financial stability, she'd found community. The Northern Riders had become her extended family, people who showed up for birthdays and school events, who babysat when needed, who included her in everything from poker nights to charity rides. The twins adored them all, especially Dean, who'd become a grandfather figure without either of them quite acknowledging it aloud. He taught Ethan about bikes and tools, encouraged Emma's love of drawing, and showed up to every school play and soccer game like it was the most important event of his life. "You're good with them," Jen observed one Saturday, watching Dean help the twins build a treehouse in her backyard. "I missed this with Emma," Dean said quietly. "She got sick when she was 10, died when she was 12. I missed her teenage years, missed teaching her to drive, missed walking her down the aisle someday. But I can be here for your kids, if that's okay." "It's more than okay," Jen said, her throat tight with emotion. "They need someone like you. I need someone like you." Dean looked at her, and something shifted in his expression. "Jen, I need to tell you something." "Okay," she said, suddenly nervous. "That night you called about finding my jacket, I was in a dark place," Dean admitted. "I'd been thinking about my wife, about how she'd given up, and I was wondering if maybe she had the right idea, if maybe it was easier to just stop fighting." Jen's chest tightened. "Dean dash. But then you called," he continued, "and you'd found my jacket with the money for Emma's fund, and you were honest, even though I could tell you needed money desperately. And something about that reminded me that good people still exist, that there's still honor and kindness and reasons to keep going." He looked at the twins playing in the half-built treehouse. "You saved my life, Jen. Not by returning the jacket, by reminding me what's worth living for." Jen didn't know what to say. She reached out and took Dean's hand, squeezing it gently. "You saved mine, too. I was drowning, and you helped me find solid ground." They stood there in her backyard, watching the twins play, holding hands like two people who'd found something unexpected and precious in each other. 1 year after finding the jacket, Jen organized a fundraiser for Emma's fund. It was held at the community center, with donations from local businesses, a silent auction, and a dinner. The Northern Riders handled security and logistics, turning out in force in their leather vests and showing that rough exteriors often hid the biggest hearts. They raised $23,000 that night. Every cent went to families dealing with pediatric cancer costs, helping with bills, providing meal vouchers, covering travel expenses for treatments. Emma's fund had helped 8 families in its first year, and with this fundraiser, they'd be able to help dozens more. Dean gave a speech that night, standing at the microphone looking uncomfortable but determined. "My daughter died 6 years ago," he said to the crowd, "and I nearly died with her. Not physically, but in every way that matters. I gave up on life, on joy, on the future. I was just existing, waiting for my time to run out." He looked at Jen, who stood at the side of the room with the twins. "Then a woman named Jen Walsh found my jacket with $5,000 in it and called to return it instead of keeping it. That simple act of honesty saved my life. It reminded me that good people exist, that integrity matters, that there are still reasons to fight." He gestured to the crowd. "All of you being here tonight, supporting Emma's fund, helping families who are where I was 6 years ago. That's what we do. We show up for each other. We help carry the load when it gets too heavy. We remind each other that we're not alone." The applause was thunderous. Jen wiped away tears, feeling Emma and Ethan press against her sides, their small hands finding hers. After the fundraiser, as they were cleaning up, Dutch pulled Jen aside. "I've been watching you and Dean," he said without preamble. "You're good for each other." Jen blushed. "We're friends." "For now," Dutch said with a knowing smile. "But that man looks at you like you hung the moon, and you look at him the same way. Life's too short to waste time pretending." "It's complicated," Jen said. "I've got kids to think about. And he's still healing from losing his wife and daughter." "That's why you're perfect for each other," Dutch said. "You both understand loss. You both know what it's like to rebuild. And you're both brave enough to try again." Jen thought about that conversation for days. She'd been so focused on survival, on getting through each day, that she hadn't let herself think about the future, about maybe finding someone to share it with. But Dutch was right. Dean looked at her like she mattered, like she was more than a single mom barely holding it together. He saw her strength, her kindness, her determination, and she saw his grief, his redemption, his capacity for love that hadn't died with his family. 2 weeks later, Dean asked her to dinner. Just the two of them, no kids, no club business, a date. Jen said yes. They went to a small Italian restaurant, the kind with checkered tablecloths and candles and wine bottles. They talked about everything and nothing: books, movies, childhood memories, dreams for the future. It was easy, comfortable, like they'd been doing this for years instead of months. "I didn't think I'd ever want this again," Dean admitted over tiramisu. "After losing my wife and Emma, I thought that part of my life was over, that I'd had my chance at family and lost it." "And now?" Jen asked gently. "Now I'm sitting across from a woman who reminds me what's worth fighting for," Dean said, "who showed me that endings can become beginnings if you're brave enough to try." He reached across the table and took her hand. "I'm not good at this. Haven't dated since the 80s, but I know what I feel, and I feel like maybe we could be something good together." Jen squeezed his hand, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "I think so too." They took things slowly, months of dinners and movie nights and long conversations before Dean even kissed her. More months before he met the twins in an official mom's boyfriend capacity, though they already loved him from the bike shop. Emma was thrilled, immediately planning their wedding, even though nobody had mentioned marriage. Ethan was more cautious, protective of his mom, but gradually warmed up when Dean proved himself reliable and kind. A year after their first date, Dean proposed. Nothing fancy, just the two of them at the bike shop after hours, with the twins hiding badly behind motorcycles to spy. "I lost my family once," Dean said, on one knee, holding a simple ring. "I didn't think I'd ever have another chance. But you gave me that chance by being exactly who you are: honest, strong, kind, brave. Will you marry me?" "Yes," Jen said, crying and laughing at the same time. "Yes, absolutely yes." The twins erupted from their hiding place, cheering and jumping. Dean stood and wrapped all three of them in a hug, and Jen thought about the journey that had led here. From finding a jacket in her yard to finding a family in the most unexpected place. They married 6 months later in a small ceremony at the clubhouse, surrounded by the Northern Riders and close friends. Emma and Ethan stood beside Jen as she said her vows, and Dean's voice broke when he promised to love and protect all three of them for the rest of his life. "You found my jacket," Dean said during his vows, going off script, "but really, you found me when I was lost. You reminded me that life goes on, that love doesn't end, that there are always new beginnings waiting if we're brave enough to reach for them. Thank you for being brave enough." Dutch, officiating the ceremony, wiped his own eyes. "I now pronounce you husband and wife. Dean, kiss your bride before we all start crying." The kiss was sweet and full of promise, and when they turned to face their guests, the Northern Riders revved their motorcycles in celebration, the sound echoing through the clubhouse like thunder. At the reception, Jen's friends from the hospital gave speeches about her strength and resilience. The bikers told embarrassing stories about Dean. The twins performed a song they'd written about their new family, and Patricia pulled Jen aside to say, "You did good, honey. Both of you did good." "I just returned a jacket," Jen said, the same words she'd said 100 times. "No," Patricia corrected. "You chose honesty over desperation. You chose integrity over easy money. And that choice changed everything. For Dean, for your kids, for all of us. Never underestimate the power of doing the right thing." 3 years into their marriage, Jen and Dean stood in the backyard of their new house, bought together, big enough for the whole family, watching Emma and Ethan play on the completed treehouse. Emma's fund had grown exponentially, helping hundreds of families. The bike shop was thriving. The twins were happy and secure and loved. "You ever think about that day?" Dean asked, his arm around Jen's waist. "When you found my jacket?" "All the time," Jen admitted. "I think about how close I came to keeping that money. How 30 seconds of temptation almost took me down a different path." "But it didn't," Dean said. "You chose right. And everything good in our lives now came from that choice." "Everything good in our lives came from you choosing to help me," Jen corrected. "From you seeing someone struggling and deciding to lift them up." "We saved each other," Dean said simply. "That's what love is. Not one person rescuing another, but two people choosing to build something together." Jen leaned into him, watching the twins play. feeling the solid warmth of the man who'd become her husband and her best friend. She thought about the jacket on the fence, the money that had tested her, the choice that had changed everything. Sometimes the right thing was the hardest thing, but it was always worth it. "Hey, Mom! Dad!" Emma called from the treehouse. "Come up here, we can see everything." Dean and Jen climbed up, squeezing into the small space with their children, looking out over their yard, their neighborhood, their life. Emma pointed out landmarks, the school, the park, the bike shop in the distance. "This is perfect," Ethan declared. "We have the best family ever." "Yeah," Emma agreed. She looked at Jen seriously. "Mom, remember when it was just us? And things were really hard?" "I remember," Jen said softly. "I'm glad it's not hard anymore," Emma said. "I'm glad we have Dad and the club and everything's better now." "Me too, baby," Jen said, her throat tight. "Me too." That night, after the twins were asleep, Jen and Dean sat on their porch swing, watching the stars. Jen thought about the journey, from barely surviving to genuinely thriving, from isolation to community, from hopelessness to hope. "I found your jacket," she said quietly, "but you found me first. You saw someone trying to do the right thing and you helped them keep doing it. That's what changed everything." "We both chose right," Dean said, again and again. "That's what builds a life worth living." Somewhere in the distance, a motorcycle engine roared to life, the sound familiar and comforting. The Northern Riders, heading out on an evening ride, living their lives with loyalty and brotherhood, and the kind of honor that transcended leather and chrome. Jen smiled and closed her eyes, feeling Dean's hand in hers, feeling the peace that came from knowing she was home. Not just in this house, but in this life, with this family, in this community that had embraced her when she needed it most. All because she'd found a jacket in her yard and chosen to do the right thing, even when the wrong thing would have been so much easier. Sometimes, Jen thought, the smallest choices led to the biggest changes, and the best things in life came from simple acts of integrity that rippled outward in ways you could never predict. She'd returned a jacket. She'd gained a family. That seemed like a fair trade.